Their saliva isn't as acidic as you'd think. The human soldier Jax grinned as he examined the alien blood on his blade. He wiped it clean with a tattered rag, ignoring the disbelieving stares of his comrade. The enemy had been fierce, relentless even, but they hadn't anticipated the resilience of the human spirit, or its dark humor. Across the battlefield, the alien commander Zogar surveyed the aftermath. With a snarl, his troops, the formidable Creo, lay strewn across the terrain, their bodies twisted in grotesque forms. The humans had fought harder than expected, pushing his forces back with an almost animalistic tenacity. Commander Zogar hissed one of his lieutenants, a creature with sharp mandibles and glowing eyes. The humans, they're not like the others we face. Zogar's eyes narrowed. He had underestimated these earthlings, assuming them to be as easily conquered as the other races they subjugated, but this resistance was different. They were tenacious, adaptable, and disturbingly fearless. It's time we show them the true power of the Creo. Zogar growled, his voice a deep rumble that sent shivers through his subordinates. Unleash the beast. The lieutenant hesitated, its Annie twitching nervously. But Commander, the beast is do it. Zethar's command was absolute, and the lieutenant scurried off to execute the order. Meanwhile, Jax and his squad regrouped, tending to their wounds and reloading their weapons. The air was thick with the scent of blood and smoke, but the humans were undeterred. They had faced extinction before, and they would face it again if it meant protecting their home. Hey Ja, called out Mike, a burly soldier with a thick beard and a penchant for bad jokes. You ever wonder what kind of beast these aliens keep talking about? Jack shrugged his eyes, scanning the horizon. Whatever it is, it can't be worse than my ex-wife's cooking. The squad burst into laughter, the sound a stark contrast to the grim surroundings. It was their way of coping, of maintaining their humanity in the face of such overwhelming odds. A low rumble echoed across the battlefield, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Jax's smile faded as he turned to face the source of the disturbance. Emerging from the Owl stronghold was a massive creature, easily 3 times the size of any human. Its body was covered in thick dark scales, and its eyes glowed with a fierce, malevolent intelligence. Holy hell, Mike muttered, his voice tinged with awe and fear. That thing is huge. Jax tightened his grip on his weapon, his mind racing. This was no ordinary opponent. The beast was a living weapon, bred for war and destruction, but there was no room for fear. Not now, all right, boys, Jax said, his voice steady. Let's show this overgrown lizard what humans are made of. The beast roared, a sound that seemed to shake the very sky. It charged forward, its massive claws tearing through the ground. Jax and his squad opened fire, their bullets ricocheting off the creature's armored hide. The beast's advance was relentless, its eyes fixed on the tiny figures. Defying it, Jax darted to the side, narrowly avoiding a swipe from the beast's claw. He fired a burst of shots at his exposed underbelly, but the bullets barely made a dent. The creature snarled, swinging its tail with devastating force. Jax was thrown back, his body slamming into the ground. Jax, Mike yelled, rushing to his friend's side. He helped Jax to his feet, his eyes never leaving the monstrous figure before them. I'm okay, Jax grunted, wincing as he stood. We need a new plan, this thing's too tough. As they regrouped, a young soldier named Liam approached, a determined look in his eyes. Sir, I've got an idea. The beast's eyes seem to be its weak point. If we can blind it, we might stand a chance. Jax nodded, a spark of hope igniting within him. All right, Liam, you take point. Mike, cover him. The rest of you keep that thing distracted. The squad sprang into action, coordinating their movements with practiced precision. Liam moved forward, his hands steady as he aimed for the bee eyes. Mike provided covering fire, his shots drawing the creature's attention away from Liam. With a deep breath, Liam fired. The bullet struck true, hitting the beast in one of its glowing eyes. The creature howled in pain, thrashing wildly. Jax seized the opportunity, leading the charge against the now blinded beast. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The humans fought with renewed vigor, their determination unwavering. They dodged the beast's frenzied attacks, chipping away at its defenses bit by bit. Come on, you ugly bastard, Jax shouted, firing another volley at the beast's other eye. We're not done yet. The beast roared again, but this time it was a sound of desperation. It stumbled, its movements growing sluggish. Jax and his squad pressed their advantage, focusing their fire on the creature's vulnerable spots. Finally, with a deafening crash, the beast collapsed. The ground shook as its massive body hit the earth, lifeless. At last the humans stood victorious, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. They had faced the beast and won, but as they surveyed the battlefield, they knew this was only the beginning. The war was far from over, and the true test of humanity's strength was yet to come. In the distance, Commander Zogar watched the defeat of his prize weapon with cold fury. The Humans had proven themselves more formidable than he had anticipated, but this was not the end. He would not rest until every last one of them was crushed beneath the might of the Creo. Prepare the next wave, Tsar commanded, his voice icy. The humans will learn the true meaning of fear. Back at the human camp, Jax and his squad regrouped, their spirits high despite the exhaustion that weighed on them. They had faced the beast and emerged victorious, but they knew more challenges lay ahead as they prepared for the next battle. Jax couldn't help but smile. The aliens had unleashed their most fearsome creature, and it had fallen to the courage and ingenuity of a few determined soldiers. It was a testament to the indomitable human spirit, a spirit that would continue to fight no matter the odds. The victory over the beast had bolstered the human spirit, but the respite was short-lived. Jax and his squad barely had time to catch their breath before the ground started to tremble again. This time it wasn't just one creature, it was a full-scale assault incoming. Mike yelled, pointing towards the horizon where a wave of Kree rock soldiers advanced, their silhouettes stark against the darkening sky. Jax tightened his grip on his rifle, the adrenaline kicking in once more. Form up, we hold this line. The squad scrambled into defensive positions, their weapons ready. They knew this would be a brutal fight, but they had no choice but to stand their ground. The KC forces were relentless, but so were the humans. Jack, we've got multiple hostiles coming in from the east, Liam reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. Roger that, Liam. Jax replied. Mike, take your team and flank them, we'll cover you. Mike nodded, rallying his team with a determined grin. You heard the man, let's show these alien bastards what we're made of. As Mike's team moved to flank the advancing Cake, Jax and the rest of the squad opened fire. The air was filled with the deafening sounds of gunfire and explosions. The Cake, though fierce, struggled against the well-coordinated human defense, but the Cake were not without their own tactics. From behind their front lines emerged a group of elite soldiers clad in heavy armor and armed with advanced weaponry. These were the best of the best, trained for one purpose: to crush any resistance. Liam, target those elites, we can't let them break through, Jax commanded. Liam nodded, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the new threat. He took a deep breath and fired his shots, precise and deadly. The elites were tough, but Liam's sharp shooting skills began to thin their ranks. Meanwhile, Mike's team had successfully flanked the Eastern Creo forces, catching them off guard. The surprise attack disrupted the alien advance, buying Jax and his squad valuable time. As the battle raged on, Jax noticed something troubling. A massive Creo transport ship was descending, its dark shape looming ominously above the battlefield. It was clear that reinforcements were on the way, and if they landed, the human defenders would be overwhelmed. We need to take out that transport ship, Jack shouted. Liam, Mike with me, the rest of you hold the line. The three of them sprinted toward the nearest ridge where they could get a clear shot at the transport ship. The ground shook with each step, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning metal. Jack, we won't have much time once that thing lands, Liam said, his voice grim. I know, Jax replied, we have to hit it hard and fast. Mike, do you still have those charges? Mike grinned, patting the satchel slung over his shoulder. Always ready, boss. They reached the ridge just as the transport ship began to deploy its landing gear. The hull was heavily armored, but Jax could see a vulnerable spot near the engines. He pointed it out to Mike, who nodded and began setting up the charges. Cover me while I set these, Mike said, his hands moving with practiced precision. Jax and Liam took up positions, their eyes scanning the area for any incoming threats. The crack weren't going to let them sabotage their reinforcements without a fight. Here they come, Liam shouted, firing at a group of KCK soldiers who had spotted them. Jax joined in, his rifle spitting fire as he kept the enemies at bay. The Kirk were relentless, but the humans held their ground, buying Mike the time he needed to set the charges. Charges set, Mike yelled, let's get out of here. The three of them sprinted away from the ridge, taking cover behind a rocky outcrop. Just as the charges detonated, the explosion was deafening, and the transport ship shuddered violently as its engines were engulfed in flames. That should do it, Jack said, a satisfied smile on his face. But his relief was short-lived. The ground beneath him rumbled, and Jax turned to see a massive CRCK war machine approach, its cannons glowing ominously. We've got a new problem, Liam said, his voice tense. The war machine was a hulking behemoth bristling with weapons and nearly impervious to small arms fire. It lumbered towards the human lines, each step sending shock waves through the ground. We can't let that thing reach our guys, Jack said, his mind racing. We need heavy firepower now. As if answering their unspoken prayers, a human tank rolled into view, its turret swiveled toward the approaching war machine. The tank commander, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant Davis gave them a nod. Need a hand, boys? Davis called out. Glad to see you, Sarge. Jack shouted back. We could use some firepower on that thing. Consider it done, Davis replied, signaling his crew. The tank's cannon roared, sending a shell hurtling towards the K-Rock war machine. The impact was devastating, the shell piercing the war machine's armor and causing a series of explosions. The war machine staggered. Its advance halted. Jax, Liam, and Mike cheered as the tank continued its assault, eventually reducing the behemoth to a smoldering wreck. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jax turned his attention back to the battlefield. The K-Rock forces were faltering, their morale shattered by the destruction of their war machine, and the transport ship pressed the advantage. Jax yelled, rallying his squad. We've got them on the run. The human defenders surged forward, their renewed vigor pushing the KC back. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves on the defensive. As the sun began to set, the humans secured the battlefield, driving the remaining Creo forces into a chaotic retreat. Jack stood amidst the wreckage, his heart pounding with exhaustion and triumph, but he knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. The Croc would regroup and come back stronger. They had to be ready. Back at the command post, Jack and his squad debriefed, their minds already turning to the next challenge. They had proven their strength and resilience, but the fight was far from over. We did good today, Jack said, looking around at his team, but we can't let our guard down. The KC will be back and we need to be ready. His squad nodded, their faces set with determination. They had faced the beast in the war machine and they had won, but the true test of their endurance and resolve was still to come as they prepared for the next phase of the conflict. Jax couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his comrades. They were more than just soldiers, they were a family united by their shared struggle, an unbreakable spirit. The war was far from over, but as long as they stood together, they knew they could face anything the universe threw at them. The battlefield was littered with the remnants of the day's fierce skirmish, but there was no time for rest. The humans had won a significant victory, but Jax knew the CRCK wouldn't stay down for long. They needed to regroup and prepare for the inevitable counterattack. Back at the command post, the atmosphere was tense. The commanders pored over maps and intelligence reports, strategizing their next move. Jax and his squad received new orders. They were to spearhead a daring raid on the Koch's main base of operations. The goal was simple but perilous: disrupt the Creo supply lines and weaken their war effort. Listen up, Jack said to his squad gathered around him. This is our chance to hit them where it hurts. We take out their supplies and we might just buy ourselves enough time to regroup and launch a full-scale offensive. The squad nodded, their resolve unwavering. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. The fate of humanity depended on their success. Under the cover of night, Jax's team moved swiftly through the alien terrain, their movements silent and precise. They reached the outskirts of the Cake base, a sprawling complex bristling with defenses. Jack signaled for his team to halt and survey the area. Liam, take out those perimeter guards. Mike, you're with me. We'll plant the charges on their supply depots. Liam's shots were silent and deadly, each one finding its mark. The guards fell without a sound and Jack and Mike slipped into the base. They moved quickly, setting charges on key structures and supply caches. The tension was palpable. They were deep in enemy territory, and discovery meant certain death. As they finished planting the last of the charges, a low growl echoed through the base. Jax turned, his heart pounding, to see a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. It was another beast, larger and more menacing than the one they had faced before. Unleash the beast, Zogthar's voice echoed over the base's intercom. Destroy the intruders. Jax's blood ran cold. This was no ordinary beast. Its eyes glowed with a terrifying intelligence, and its movements were calculated and precise. This was the pinnacle of Caro bioengineering, a creature designed specifically to counter human tactics. Fall back, Jax yelled. Get to the extraction point. The squad moved as one, retreating through the base. As the beast pursued them, its massive form crashed through barriers and obstacles. Relentless in its pursuit, Jax fired at it, but his bullets barely slowed it down. They needed a new plan, and fast. Liam, get to higher ground. We need to lure it into a trap, Jax ordered. Liam nodded and scrambled up a nearby structure, his rifle at the ready. Jax and Mike led the beast towards an open courtyard, their movements calculated to draw it into the center. Now, Liam, Jack shouted. Liam fired his shots, aimed at the creature's eyes. The beast roared in pain, momentarily blinded. Jack seized the opportunity and threw a grenade at its feet. The explosion rocked the courtyard, but the beast, though wounded, still stood. We need more firepower, Mike yelled, his voice strained. Jax's mind raced. The charges they had planted were their only hope. We have to Lead it to the supply depots. If we can detonate the charges while it's in range, we might stand a chance with the beast still reeling from the grenade blast. Jax and his squad made a desperate dash towards the depot. The creature followed, its growls growing louder and more menacing with each step. Get ready to blow the charges on my mark, Jax shouted into his comm. They reached the depot just as the beast closed in. Jax turned to face it, his heart pounding. This was it, their last stand now, Jax yelled. The charges detonated in a series of deafening explosions. The shock waves tore through the base, and the beast was caught in the epicenter. Its roars turned to screams as it was engulfed in flames and debris. When the dust settled, Jackson and his squad stood amidst the wreckage. The beast lay motionless, finally defeated. The Caro base was in ruins, their supply lines decimated. We did it, Mike said, his voice filled with awe. Jax nodded, a weary smile on his face. Yeah, we did. But this isn't over. We need to get back and prepare for whatever comes next. They made their way back to the human lines, their spirits lifted by the victory but tempered by the knowledge of the battles yet to come. The KC had thrown their best at them, and they had emerged victorious, but the war was far from over. Back at the command post, Jax and his squad were hailed as heroes. Their daring raid had crippled the CRCK war effort, buying humanity precious time, but Jax knew that the true test of their endurance was still ahead. The Creo would not rest until humanity was crushed, and they had to be ready for the next assault. As they prepared for the battles to come, Jax couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his comrades. They had faced the beast and triumphed, proving that humanity's spirit was unbreakable. No matter what the future held, they would stand together and fight for their home. The war was far from over, but as long as they had each other, they knew they could face any challenge, and with every battle they won, they came one step closer to victory.